So welcome to class 6. Somehow I ended up doing a whole class on Saturn. I think Saturn's so important in my life, and I don't know if we spend enough time on Saturn. And there's a lot of blind spots with Saturn, so I thought it would be important to have a whole lesson on Saturn. So it just kind of happened, and a lot of it is around fear too, which is so. Really, fear is more connected with the mind and the moon, but in a sense, Saturn often contributes along with Rahu and Gulika, which we'll look at too later in the class, later in the course. So let's just start with some. Okay, what's going on here? Okay. Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Om Ganapatiye Namaha, Vakritunda Mahakaya, Suryakoti Samaprapa, Nirvikyam Kurame Deva, Sarvakareshi Sarvada, Jnanamulam Guru Murti, Pujamulam Guru Padam, Mantramulam Guru Vakyam, Mokshamulam Guru Kripa, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrichoma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavatitamasttu Ma Vivishai Vahai Om Shanti 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 Om Aditaye Samaye Mangalai Buddhaye Cha Guru Shukrashani Bischa Rahave Ketave Namaha. Honoring the great ones, Lord Krishna, Goddess Saraswati, Veda Vyasa, my guru teachers, my judges teachers. So we're in class 6. Next week we'll do houses, looking at the unconscious patterns of the 7th, 8th, and 12th houses. And then we'll have a lesson on blind spots and dashas after that. And new lesson, not in previous courses, on Lajita Advasta is coming up. Let's hope I can find the time to do that. Okay, Shushank I have not seen. I know she's taking care of a relative. Tom is still moving. Affy's here. Asa, I have not heard from. Brett, I have not heard from. Elizabeth's here. Catherine's here. Catherine, do I need to unmute you? Let's see, hold on. So I just unmuted you, so you should be able to, well, you're self-muted and muted by me. Okay, well, I can't seem to get you. Okay, now you can take control of the mic if you, okay. Oh, good, you there? Yeah. Good.
Yeah, yes, okay.
Brian, I haven't heard from. Okay, so our weekly meditation group is going to start today at 2:15. It's going to be on Zoom because we can get you up visually, and when I give a blessing at the end of the meditation session, it's nice for me to kind of see you visually. So that's why we're doing it on Zoom. I can only get one person on a camera on and go to webinar, although there may be a way for me to do that. Maybe they've upgraded the software. I'm gonna have to look into it. Okay. So interesting lesson today. I sometimes sometimes I'd like to put together totally new things. So there's a lot of new material that I've never taught before. I know after you mentioned you'd love to have a whole class on Saturn, and there's reason to have a whole class on Saturn. So important, you have to think about it for next year. There's so much to do with Saturn because it's just so important. So we get a little preview of a whole Saturn class here. Special thanks to one of my late teachers at Terra Builda. A wonderful book, The Astrology in Your Past Lives, called Pauline Stone, Liz Green, and a few other people. Did anybody have a chance? I always recommend that you read through the slides because I always put in more material that I can talk about. So it's good review here. I mean, sometimes it's really good to kind of memorize kind of keywords for the signs of the zodiac. Aries, action and ego, and connected to actions performed. Taurus, planets placed to give wealth, social success, and prosperity. Sign that feeds us, because of food. Gemini, planets here have to get creative or they get stuck in idleness. Cancer shows our best friend, those who care, those who can heal us. So whoever's in planets are in there can do that. Leo shows us what we know, naturally learn, read, or what we are superior in. Virgo shows where we need to be pure or better or improve. It's 6th house. That's like Libra may undergo conflicts, and if conflicts in these planets placed to grow in prosperity, desire, and distribution of resources. Again, Libra's not the harmonious planet people think it is because Aries owns the 7th. Those people are always fighting. You don't want to get into a tangle with a Libra. Scorpio, serious past life suffering. Curses, Sagittarius, dogma rules dharma. Good luck if you follow your dharma here. Capricorn, planets here are filled with lack of hope, huge disappointments, grief. Planets here can be in a coma and unfriendly, not helpful, and force us to work hard. So Capricorn's a difficult sign. Aquarius, planets placed here are sad and cry and suffer. Very key, can deny gains and create losses. There's a lot of deep karma with Aquarius. Pisces, planets placed in the sign create great talents and knowledge. Learning to sacrifice is key. Okay, just key, because we're going through the signs again, so it's good to remember those key points. Another quick review I wanted to remind you is this idea of I don't like to use, I try not to use the word aspects too much because the word planetary association is more powerful, and that happens in so many ways. Planet in a sign, planet in a nakshatra, exchange of houses is very strong. Exchange of nakshatras, very even stronger. Rashi Drishti, which we studied, all the dual signs aspect each other, and then the movable signs aspect the fixed signs aspect the movable signs. The more I use that with the South Indian, the more I see them, and the more I see hidden things that I'm missing. So please, remember to review all that. Okay, let's talk about Saturn. The core archetypes of Saturn: responsibility, hard work. There's a spiritual side to it: meditation and quest for enlightenment, introspection, lots of suffering, pain, adversity, delay, theft. Important words there. Common man and workers. Again, it represents the servant class, democracy. Connected to low self-esteem, self-flagellation. Again, we beat ourselves up too much when Saturn hits our ascendant. The urge towards status, also, which is a funny thing because Capricorn is the 10th sign of the zodiac. We want to be somebody. We work hard to rise and become someone. Slow, patient, drawn out. Again, the key with Saturn is the tortoise. Slow and steady wins the race. The hare may get there, but the tortoise, if it's through long, arduous, hard work. We save money. We gain status. We grow, and we grow. But people want shortcuts. They gamble in the stock market. They think they can put all their money in Bitcoin and make a killing, and they can retire early. So it's Saturn never rewards that activity. Slow, patient, drawn out. When Saturn's weak, it creates loneliness, depression, and frustration, and that's why it's such a difficult malefic. And so often it is afflicted. Blind spots about Saturn, fear and doubt. These are important always to counsel people about, and they don't always see it. I mean, we kind of buy into we're a bad person, we beat ourselves up, we're a bad person, we did this, we're no good, we don't have this, we don't deserve this. There's all that crazy mind talk, which is kind of a blind spot, and you have to kind of catch it. And if you don't do enough meditation, the mind takes over, and you can't witness what your mind is doing. So the key is you have to kind of be peaceful and restful, and then you see how your mind is kind of playing tricks on you. And for the most part, you have to kind of recognize, all that energy, and you just have to say, stop it, Saturn, you can go now. And it takes some, when we're tired and we don't have any spiritual practice behind us, we really get drawn into self-flagellation and stuff like that. Rahu and Gulika can elevate fear even more so. See if I can put together. When we study Gulika, we'll look at more kind of extreme paranoia that comes from Gulika, son of Saturn. Fear is an important aspect because it's connected to our base chakra and to survival. I mean, it's our core need. We have to be safe, to be aware. But you've seen how fear has been manipulated, with the COVID crisis, and advertisers use it all the time because it's our most core emotion is survival. And when we're young, if we burn ourselves on the stove, we know not to stick our finger in the fire. So it's it's an important survival mechanism that is part of memory, our chit, and we need it. But what happens is if we carry too much fear around in our mind, it runs us needlessly. And so we have to kind of learn to recognize it. And again, 99% of the things that we fear don't happen. Eckhart Tolle has, you haven't listened to Power of Now, wonderful spiritual teacher. There's a lot of YouTube things on it too, probably now. He's got a lot of YouTubes. His core book, he's kind of a enlightened teacher, and it kind of happened spontaneously for him. And he just reminds us that, 99% of the things we fear don't happen. The 1% that happen are kind of surprise. So you have to kind of learn to dismiss fear, whatever it is, and the things that do happen kind of hit you out of the blue. And so this is why we have to kind of recognize fear and just kind of dismiss it. It runs our life too much. It's, even I've got Saturn in the 12th, so I have all these unconscious fears from my dad's Holocaust experience, and it still runs me, and it's not useful. I mean, I think you have to kind of realize the divine's taking care of you, and you're not gonna, end up, in the pit or captured by the Nazis or something. So it's very kind of, it's a very kind of dark energy. There's a wonderful book I've used in my articles, Emmanuel's book. It's an amazing book. And I'll read you some quotes for it because it's just really beautiful. What are you really afraid of? You fear humiliation. You fear being wrong. You fear to love in an imperfect world. Obviously, fear is the opposite of love. If we're afraid to be in a relationship, to be intimate with somebody, then we're buying into fear that we're going to get hurt, and we're not going for love, which is a much stronger force. We fear being wrong. Yeah, I mean, our ego, think about Saturn and connected to Mars or Saturn and Aries. I mean, the humiliation of being wrong is just so intense. And then we have to say, she says, what is the darkness of fear trying to say to you? I mean, you have to kind of really examine fear. Most of the time it's just illusion. What are you afraid of in your life? What are you afraid of in yourself? You must ask these questions and challenge the fear. It's really kind of beautiful because you have to kind of, it's such a pervasive energy that runs our society, and yet, the universe is run by love and God, and the media kind of teaches us fear, whether it's monkeypox or COVID, or now it's nuclear war with Russia. They're just always pushing something to kind of keep us in fear. And, the biggest fear, of course, is death, because we want to survive. And, when you read all these books about death, you find out, that there's no such thing as death. There's a beautiful life on the other side. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has documented that. And so if you really want to move beyond fear, you've got to actually study death and realize that it's a beautiful experience and there's nothing to fear. As we go into fear with open eyes and open heart and courage, you will see that fear is just an empty room. It is only as strong as your avoidance of it. If you give it power, it takes over you. I mean, it's kind of funny, if you end up in a very dark room you can't get the lights on. You know, you see all kinds of shadows and all kinds of fears come up, and then you finally get the lights on, and it's some empty box or something that you're scared of. Or I know we were, the famous story when I was in India in the first time, and they didn't have lights, and I was at the ashram, and there were cobras on the ashram, and you had to have your flashlight, and sometimes you didn't look closely, you found some rope or something on the road, and you thought it was a snake, and you would get all freaked out. But it's all kind of, we have to shine light on our fears, and the more you do meditation, the more you open your heart, the more you courageously look into fear, you move forward. There's nothing to fear in the universe, even death. Rest yourself in the reality of God's eternal and everlasting presence. Know that there are plans deeper, there is consciousness wiser. I bless you with the awareness of your eternal safety. Spelled it. Okay. Fear is a trick, a sham, a sleight of hand, it is illusion. The master magicians are at work, demand to see up the sleeve. So fear keeps us in bondage. It keeps us out of the light. It keeps us out of love. And so we have to challenge it. That's why it's the biggest blind spot, because it's totally illusion. And yes, we have to be afraid of certain things to survive. And we obviously, but fear shouldn't run our lives. She closes by saying, "You are safe, you are safe, you are infinitely safe, oh my dears. If I could only make it possible for you to experience the loving, gentle kindness of the universe, the balance and the fairness, the sweetness and the joy, there would never be another moment of fear in your lives," and that is true. So it's a good quote to put on your mirror in the morning to read. It's a very wonderful book that changed my life. Okay, reactions to that? Isn't that beautiful?
Yes. I always love hearing things like that, because fear can be overwhelming at times.
Yeah, and a lot of fear can be controlled with diet. Ayurveda, if we have, when the air element gets exaggerated in our bodies, we tend to have more fear. So if we eat cold, dry things, fear is more. You can drink calming herbal teas, and there's a lot of ways to reduce fear, but we don't, I know we're not taught them, but it's very important, because then your whole life changes if you can do that. Kathy, any thoughts?
No, it's 100% valid, but there are times where fear just takes a hold of you, and it's hard to let go of the fear. I'm very familiar with fear.
Yeah.
And I think it does help to have a daily, regular structure where you meditate. It helps, but there's sometimes out of the blue, it just comes.
Right. So, I'll teach you in the meditation work a meditation called Serene Mind that you can do in 3 minutes. And then I've sent John Douglas's emotional repair thing, which is 3 minutes. And sometimes, it happens to me too. And I sometimes just have to do these things. Or I have to, if I have too much coffee, I get a little too wired, and I just have to drink some chamomile or lavender tea. There are all kinds of ways to deal with it, but we have to be conscious of what it is and to deal with it, and not just think it's normal. It's not. It's illusion. It's normal because the world says it's normal, but it's not reality. Okay, let's get into Saturn archetypes. Saturn's the perfectionist, methodical, cautious. The creative principle creates perseverance in performing humble tasks that might seem demeaning. So janitors obviously are ruled by Saturn, and house cleaners, but we couldn't really do without them. And I think sometimes you get people with too much ego, and they don't want to take out the garbage, or they don't want to, they complain that the janitorial help is difficult. I'm next door to the kitchen in my office building, and they just can't get help to keep it clean. And they call them and they don't do anything. So this just before class, I just kind of found the garbage bag in the cleaning closet. I'm going to take this big trash barrel out and get rid of it because, you know, sometimes you just, you know, it's not like I'm better than them. Sometimes we just have to kind of do those humble tasks. You know, they're just part of life, and it's Saturn. It's we all have to do those things. We all have to do laundry and wash dishes, and you know, we don't want our ego to get in the way and thinking that we're not too good for that. But that's kind of a Saturn thing. Saturn can create comfort in solitude, simplicity, restraint of the senses. You know, those are actually really good things. Some people can't control their senses, their sexual appetites, or they can't control their food appetites. You know, it's a problem. Saturn can create discipline. Saturn is the Lord of time. It sets boundaries by delaying fulfillment of desires. So, you know, key point, because, you know, it's slow and steady wins the race. Saturn teaches us patience. If we rush into things, if we want it now and we take shortcuts, you know, then we get into trouble. So we have to kind of remember to build stuff over time. You know, what we want will happen with patience, perseverance, and hard work. It's just what Saturn teaches. And if we cut corners with Rahu and try to kind of cheat our way into the top, then, you know, we eventually get taken down. Such delays occur when we fail to live life in the present moment. Again, Saturn should move us into the present moment, which is one of the things that we teach in all our meditation work. It's like, is our mind in the present? Is it worried about the future, which is Saturn? Is it living in the past, which is also kind of getting, you know, a problem? So we have to enjoy the present moment. Saturn can create limited space by defining our physical structure. Saturn helps us to move off stimulus response treadmill and to bring spirituality into the physical. So we have to kind of, when Saturn comes up, it's supposedly, ideally, it wants to move us towards spirituality. And like I said, if we miss the call for meditation and development of our spiritual world, then we kind of suffer. And again, this happened to me early in life. I had a lot of fear in life. You know, with my debilitated moon, I got into meditation at 18, and, you know, it changed my life. You know, and I've been involved in spiritual practice, you know, for many years. But it's the key. It's a long-term thing. You have to do it regularly. Hatha yoga, physical exercise. Now, people who have trouble with meditation, you know, even just good regular physical exercise. Hatha yoga is good because it's slow. Saturn is slow. Saturn rules Hatha yoga. Tai Chi would also be ruled by Saturn. So if you do these slow movements, you have to slow things down. So when you go too fast, the fear comes up. Mentally, Saturn is cold and dry and logical. It's wanting to find the truth and science. It's connected to courtroom evidence. Saturn's into health and longevity and physical structure. You know, Saturn does well in the 7th house to uphold marriage, to continue the race and longevity of the human race. So against Saturn in the 7th house, or even in Libra, which I have, it has Digbala there because it knows you have to stick with your marriage to make it work. You know, I have Saturn in Libra and married 25 years, and I think, you know, that's why, because I just am patient. You know, you put Rahu in the 7th, it wants to change partners. Put Mars in the 7th, put Mercury in the 7th, it wants to have an affair. You know, those things don't help long-term successful relationship. Saturn archetypes, fantasy favorites: getting back to the land, finding your roots, feeling the earth, retreating from the city into nature. So all these, like Thoreau and all these people that used to kind of want to get out of the city, and, you know, the hippie movement was very Saturnian. Less is more, shunning the complexity of the world, needs logical talk and precise language and not dream speculation. Saturn's down to earth, no nonsense, taking no prisoners. You know, Saturn is truth. You know, sometimes we like people who just, like, you know, you get people who kind of like who aren't direct, who don't ask for what they want. You know, I think we appreciate Saturn, you know, it's like, no nonsense, you know, just tell the truth, and, you know, don't try to kind of mince words, and just, you know, get it out there. Saturn loves meditation, solitude, and silence retreats. I'll tell you that for a fact. Saturn in the exalted in the 12th. I've done like 80 silent retreats. Important for Saturn to retreat, go into silence when making decisions, and avoid distractions and detours. Again, Saturn governs transcendence, withdrawing the senses, which also happens at death. So, again, we tend to think of Saturn as the bad guy. He's, really the most spiritual planet. He's really the most important planet in the chart. And when he's not activated properly, we suffer, And Saturn facts, Saturn's exalted in Libra, debilitated in Aries, owns Capricorn, co-owns Aquarius with Rahu, weak in the first house, Markastana. It's also like weak in Aries because, it's the same thing. Does well in the 7th house, or like Libra. Friends with Venus and Mercury, neutral to Mars, enemies with Ketu, Sun, Moon, and Rahu. It's an androgynous planet. Again, if it shows up in the Navamsha chart, it can either lead to asexuality or, gay sexuality or bisexuality. So it has that kind of energy. It has a tamasic guna. Tamasic just means material. Again, Saturn wants stuff. It likes stuff. It accumulates in the material world, and ultimately, if you get too caught up in the material, you suddenly realize that it's ephemeral and it suddenly vanishes. I mean, unfortunately, all these poor people in Florida, it's just horrific what happened last week, and yet it's also a wake-up call. Like, we think our life is our house and how much stuff we have in our house, and it suddenly vanishes, where we turn to God. So it can be a wake-up call on the spiritual level when that happens. Again, it governs Vata, the air element, so it increases anxiety. Again, avoid cold drinks, cold, dry things. If you have a lot of Vata energy, if you're anxious, you have to remember hot, unctuous things. Hot drinks always. Ayurveda is really big on always drinking hot water or warm water, never cold water, never ice water. It just increases the fear element too much. Obviously good friends for Taurus and Libra. So those signs always do well with Saturn. Connected to disease, longevity, hard work, service, old age, death, and struggle. So those things are always kind of the bad guys. But again, the other side of disease is health. If we're disciplined and we take care of our health, then we don't get disease. Longevity, everybody wants to live long. After 70, Saturn takes over and starts aging the body, and to recycle us. Hard work, again, our youth have a problem with this sometimes, and Venus governs up until age 30, and let's play, let's party, let's have sex, let's go to a rock and roll concert. God, I don't want to work. But eventually Sati Sat hits, and if you don't learn the lessons of Saturn's by 36, you're in trouble. You have to be responsible. You have to be an adult, and Saturn matures there at 36 to teach you to be responsible. Saturn governs old age again after 70. It's the Sarkakadasha, death and struggles. Professions, laborers, long hours and hard work, workaholics, judges, low-paid teachers, low-paying jobs, teachers, researchers, builders and surveyors. Teachers, I always think of as Jupiter, but I think spiritual teachers are more Jupiter. It could be that regular teachers are Saturn. I don't know what the source of that is. It may be the Vedas. School of Saturn. The essence of Saturn is learning responsibility, willingness to face the difficulties we experience in life as the karmic outcome of past action. So, what Saturn does, Saturn going over ascendant, Saturn Sati Sat, Saturn going through the 4th or 8th, they bring up difficult lessons for us, and ultimately, they're teaching us universal responsibility. We can't cancel out karma. As we sow, so shall we reap. The ultimate goal is to move us beyond the material and move us towards spirituality. Positive side of Saturn, when it's strong in 3rd, 6th, 11th houses, aspected by Jupiter, Venus, or Mercury, in Aquarius, Libra, Taurus, Gemini, Virgo. Those are better signs for it. Deeper insights into the workings of the divine process. Again, very spiritual planet if it's strong. Pleasure in overseas travel. These things could come out in the Saturn period if it was good. accelerate spiritual growth, lifting the material veil, psychological transformation. My affirmation, I trust the process of change and loss and turn my sights on the divine. So, again, Saturn can take things away. And when it does that, it reminds us that the material is always fleeting, and we have to remember that if we don't find God, then, our stuff is not going to come with us to heaven. Saturn, the negative side, we don't really like it. Cancer, Leo, Scorpio, and Aries in particular. We don't like it in the first houses. Most of the houses Saturn does not do well in, except 3, 6, and 11. 11th, it aspects the first, so it's really, if you have to have Saturn any place, you want it in the 6th, or the 3rd is going to aspect the 5th. So Saturn's always causing problems. We don't like Saturn aspected by malefics, Mars, Ketu, Rahu, Sun. Again, dark sides of Saturn that can come out: abandoned, forsaken, marooned, emotionally dry, unsupported, fear of the future, lonely, melancholy. I have a lot of those energies. I've had to work hard to get over them. Persecuted, destruction of material gifts and sensual gratification. Ayurveda, low vitality, weak digestion, constipation, pain, old age. Affirmation I came up with: I am not rushed. I accept delays and setbacks. I work hard and I handle my life responsibly. So, again, Saturn, I see this in my young friends here. They don't want to work. They don't want to be responsible. And, ultimately, Saturn will create some event for them to kind of wake them up, because that's what it does. And then if you don't learn those lessons, you eventually, you get crushed. General karma of Saturn: we have to shoulder our responsibilities and persevere through difficulties. Remain true to personal conviction regardless of social pressures. Negative side: laziness, refusal to make an effort, allowing others to do our tasks. So that's kind of a Saturn and Aries type of thing. I find those people are very lazy, and they just can't get moving. They're kind of inert. When Saturn's weak, it's inertia. Can have excessive material ambition. That's just, it's out of balance. Nice to have nice things, but if that's our life, and then we don't take care of our spiritual world or our inner world, then we're going to have a problem. General karma of Saturn: when we have good Saturn karma from past lives, we have stability of lifestyle and ability to gain natural respect of others and rise in position. I have the exalted Saturn. I've been fortunate, I think, with my Saturn. Resisting social pressures and remaining true to ourselves is another core issue that we learn. Blessed with good connections, good concentration, and capacity to work hard and realize our goals. It's true. Negative side of Saturn, as we talked about, past inertia may lead to feeling of lack of support from others, lack of self-confidence, extreme self-consciousness, problems with anxiety that lead to allergies and health issues, workaholism, which is out of control. You get exhausted and break down. What Saturn usually has to learn is to ask ourselves whether we're willing to commit to the world and uplift society. Again, it's an outer planet, so it has more of a societal energy, and Capricorn, Aquarius are more societal signs. Are we over concerned with duty and achievement so that it causes too much stress in our life? Have we accepted spiritual responsibility for ourselves and our destiny? Again, you get people who complain with Saturn. Saturn's afflicted. I read my article in my Saturn book about complaining. It's just really a wasted emotion, and everybody does it. You get tired, you complain. Do you do something? I just give you that example. Like, I'm tired of calling them, the management and asking them to take care of the kitchen. I'm just going to throw out the garbage myself, and it's a big deal. It's heavy, and it's smelly, and I'm just going to do it. It's just like, if you sometimes you just have to take responsibility rather than complain. Saturn and past karma, it represents guilt, fear, and self-imposed restriction. Guilt's a really wasted emotion. We'll talk about it in a minute. fear we've talked a lot about. Self-imposed restriction is just not acting. You know, it's like, I can't do it, I can't travel, I'm afraid to go outside the house, I'm afraid to go to this foreign country, I'm afraid of the terrorists. You know, we make up all these things in our mind, self-imposed restrictions. I mean, and oftentimes they're not there. Sometimes you have to kind of like break through the boundaries and trust God that, you know, you're going to be okay and protected. You know, you don't do stupid things. You know, you don't go to the gates outside of Chicago and walk around at night, you know, obviously, you know, but at the same time, you know, you don't just, you know, cancel everything because you're afraid. So Saturn, too much fear imprisons us, and sometimes, you know, we have to use Mars here. Hanuman Chalisa is the remedy for Saturn. You know, just do it. The Nike slogan, just do it. Saturn is also connected to pain. So usually when Saturn's very afflicted, if it hits a certain part of your body in transit or in your natal chart, you know, pain can be activated. So and pain is very real, and suffering is very real from pain. Guilt, how do we handle guilt and shame? We take responsibility and become mature, and it takes you into the light. So the thing about guilt is, you know, it's living in the past. Shame, you know, I did this, you know, we're living in the past, and we got to move into the future. And sometimes we just have to take responsibility, become mature, and move into the light. We accept our imperfection. You know, we're not perfect. You know, we make mistakes. You know, we can't beat ourselves up. Saturn beats us up. We said this, we did that. You know, 20 years later, we're still holding on to it. You know, just enough. Let go of it. It's the past. Make amends. I mean, if you hurt somebody, and you know, this is a great technique. If you're not talking to somebody, go out and, you know, something happened 20 years ago. You know, I really, you know, I'm really sorry for what happened. I really didn't mean to do that. And, you know, it's very healing. I just did that with somebody, a past office manager, and I felt very connected to him, and somehow he misunderstood something that I said, and he blew up. And, you know, it was a very deep situation. He wouldn't accept phone calls or apologies or letters. Don't write me. And anyway, I was cleaning out my office, and there's this painting that he liked, and I called him up and gave it to him, and then he took it and he was grateful, and then he said, you know, I'm sorry for acting the way I did, you know. So I mean, it's nice just to, you know, if we can clean up those, we all have people in our lives like that. If we can clean them up, you know, we don't have any shame or guilt or regret, and we're get out of the past. We just have to do it, you know. Otherwise, it's stagnant energy. It suffocates us. You know, you know, it's self-inflicted punishment. God doesn't want to punish us. You know, we punish ourselves. Saturn and depression. Again, Saturn Moon connections, of course, create depression, loneliness, self-isolation. You know, it's very real. You know, 20 million people suffer from depression. It's a very huge thing. There are huge pharmaceuticals that take care of it, and they really don't. They kind of mess you up even more so. But there are natural remedies for depression. There are Bach flower remedies. There are dietary things that can be done. Sometimes you need more prana in your diet, more fresh foods. Yoga, breath work, and yoga are very important for moving out of depression. Saturn's the good and the bad parent. So the good side of parent, the good Saturn is the responsible parent. He provides security for his children. He disciplines them so they're not eating too much sugar and playing video games for 20 hours. You know, and the good Saturn is going to have Jupiter Venus connections and, you know, good house connections. The bad parent, you know, we've had too many bad parent Saturn figures in our life. Excessive fear, prone to be too restrictive. You know, you can't go outside and play. You can't have your ice cream. You can't watch TV. I had a grandmother figure who was like that, and I was 4 or 5, and I wanted to go outside and play with the kids, and she would come out screaming, "Come home!" It really did a number on me. You have to kind of balance. There's reason to be you know, to be a bad parent sometimes, but you know, there are loving ways to do it, but we don't need these Victorian nannies, you know, attesting to ruining your life, because eventually you're afraid to go out, you know. When Saturn is weak and the bad parent, you know, it exaggerates fear. The media pounds us with fear. The world's going to blow up. The COVID virus is going to get us. You know, the monkeypox virus is going to get us. You know, you have to turn off the TV and just, you know, we have to be aware of all these things. I mean, you know, what are you going to do if they, you know, do bomb your city? You know, yeah, it's nice to have a plan, or you know, have some iodine and radiation kit, but you know, I don't know if it's really going to happen, and you know, can you spend your life, you know, living like that, you know, afraid to go out of the house? It blocks us from our divinity. We're too caught up in the past. It's like we're stuck in guilt and remorse, and it's a problem. One of my teachers used to say that it's kind of like, you know, when you're lost in regret in the past, it's like swimming in the sewer water and enjoying it. You know, it's just like a wasted moment. Saturn K2 can be like that sometimes. It's just, we just have to move on. We have to apologize for what we've done. We have to, you know, we have to not relish in, you know, being victimized or living in the sewer. So we have to move into the present moment. Saturn creates too much fear. We make a mistake, it's being revisited now, but we may, you know, create blocking energy. So, I mean, sometimes Saturn transits and dashas, they bring up these old energies to revisit and heal. And we have to learn that it's just kind of, are we going to make new choices now? Are we going to take responsibility? Are we going to move out of, you know, shame and guilt? You know, so it's really kind of powerful. Okay, that was my spiritual lesson on Saturn reactions.
I've always thought Saturn is a better planet, even though it delivers the hard lessons. So that when I'm working with clients, I'm always like, you can't be scared of Saturn. Like, Saturn can do so much for you if you learn to work with it. And it just gets such a bad reputation, I feel like, from everybody. So I'm trying to change that.
Good. So you're on my side. You know, I agree. I think we have to, you know, I think I'm going to have to teach that Saturn course next year, just because it really deserves that much attention. You know, so important. Happy, Catherine, any thoughts?
Well, I think I've shared that with you. I haven't gone into the Saturn Mahadasha. I don't think I'll last that long, but Saturn Bhukti has been good for me in manifesting things.
Right.
It's been hard where it brings fear and anxiety, lots of anxiety. You know, like I said, the last Sati Sati that I had 30 years ago was difficult, but every Saturn Bhukti, most of my Saturn Bhuktis have manifested, but it also, because it is in the third house in Aquarius.
Right, it's good placement.
It's a good placement, and then it moves to the fourth house, right? So it does manifest. However, it has caused a lot of blocks and delays.
Right, and the trick with Saturn is patience. You know, my wife thinks I'm the most patient person in the universe, because I've got that exalted Saturn aspected by a stationary Jupiter, and you know, I can be feverish also in a Rahu period, but you just have to kind of, you know, have the mantra, it will come in God's time. You know, if I rush and make it happen, you know, I'm going to make mistakes. You know, let it come, you know.
And sometimes certain things won't. It doesn't grant everything.
Right.
But I'm like you said, now that I'm going to be going into my next Sati Sati period next year, I'm trying to focus more on spirituality and meditation and grounding to help with the Sati Sati period.
Yeah, it's the only thing that really helps it. But the intellectual knowledge is important also. Okay, great. Okay, so I wanted to look at Saturn by sign, and I think it's important. I don't know if I've ever spent that much time. It's also Saturn by sign in house, because Aries is like the first house, so Saturn in Aries is like Saturn in the first house. So we're doing signs and houses at the same time, and there's an appendix on the houses, but it's important to, I think, really, I think, the sign that your Saturn is in the house that it's in, you have to kind of immediately be able to translate that. So I think it's a good, because it's such a prominent thing that, I think it can be very revealing if you can translate it into really kind of deep information. So that's why I put together this lesson. So Saturn in Aries tends to be too self-willed, impulsive, and undisciplined. Again, Aries is Mars, it wants it now. It's impulsive. And if it runs around like a rabbit, which is what Saturn does in Aries, then it develops health problems, and maybe it gets it done, but it's just not happy, Again, it's Mara Carcastana there, and that's because that move, Saturn does well in Capricorn, which is the base chakra. It grounds us. It creates the infrastructure to create the base of the pyramid. If it's in the head, Aries is like the head. It's like we don't want fear in the head. We want it at the base of the pyramid, right? So we have to kind of remember that model. Saturn will delay self-esteem until it is successful at work and provides security for themselves and others. So Saturn, Aries is such a sign about self-esteem. I want to accomplish, I want to create, I feel good about myself when I get things done. I've got Mars in Aries, and it's my ascendant Lord. So, it's our life is about getting stuff done. And, Saturn in Aries is too reckless and undisciplined to be successful. It can create laziness or inertia, and then it can explode in anger. So, you've got to get, when people have Saturn in Aries, sometimes if it's really afflicted and inert, which is the problem, you have to do a lot of healing to kind of, you have to give them the Nike mantra, just do it, even though you're afraid, and even though you're lazy, and even though you're tired, you got to just get out and go to the gym, or you got to just get out and apply for those jobs, or you just got to start doing something, because they just don't, it creates inertia, and inertia, nothing happens, and then you suffer, Saturn in the first house is Saturn in Aries is like Saturn in the first house. The ego gets eclipsed by self-deprecation. Saturn in the first to me is one of the most difficult things to have, because you're so busy beating yourself up, and it's not good enough, and I'm not good enough, and they didn't do it right, and they become victimized. You have to kind of do the self-esteem work. Jack Canfield, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and love yourself and feel grateful for all the things you did every day. Sometimes, if Saturn's afflicted in Aries, it may be too aggressive, may attack others. It brings out the dark side of Mars in Aries, which is fighting. The other part of Saturn in Aries, fear of shining and being in the world. Again, it's shy. It's almost like K2 in the first house too. It's like not quite as bad. I think they're both really difficult. But you just, I tell people to get on stage, to go to karaoke bars, go to Toastmasters. You've got to get out there. Saturn in the first, you don't want anybody to see you, like K2 in the first. You've got to get your Sun in the 12th. All those, you've got to get out there and just, hardest thing in the world, get on stage and do it. Saturn in the first, high in fear and low in self-esteem. It's a horrible combination. They self-isolate rather than struggle. People stay home, they don't meet people, they don't network, so things don't happen, they don't connect, they get isolated, they get depressed. It's a very vicious cycle. Sometimes there's repressed anger with Saturn in Aries. Again, Saturn is like a cold snowball. You put it in the sign of movement, a fire sign, it doesn't fight. And Aries needs to fight. Sometimes we need to fight. If we don't, we get blocked, we get depressed, right? may give up to develop a why bother attitude. And I see this sometimes with Saturn. It's like, um, you know, some people feel so victimized. They say, well, I can't change that. Why bother? I'm going to stay home and drink. You know, I mean, it's a really difficult place to get. And then people really get self-destructive, obviously, in those behaviors. May lead to deep self-analysis to probe identity. That's the good side of Saturn. You know, if you suffer enough with Saturn in the first, you eventually have to do something and, you know, to change your life. And it takes power. It takes self-analysis. Saturn, the good side of Saturn in Aries, it might be very hardworking. When it's afflicted, it's cruel, impatient, lacking social grace, suicidal, despondent. Saturn in Aries is just very difficult. Luckily, you don't see too many of it because it only happens every, you know, three out of every 29 years. But it does come up, and you really have to help those people that really suffer. Now, I hope we haven't looked at this chart before. Pete Rose. Anybody remember Pete Rose? You have to be a Pete Rose was a very famous baseball player in the late 60s and early 70s. I mean, he was called Mr. Hustle, and he had held the record for, I think, the most hits, I think he also had a record for stolen bases. I mean, he was just he was an amazing, talented baseball player. And then at some point late in his career, he also became a manager. At some point in his career, he got involved with the mafia characters and was betting, against his baseball team or something like that. And he got caught, and he was a sure Hall of Fame person. I mean, just one of the greatest baseball players ever. And he was denied the Hall of Fame for his gambling faux pas. Again, this chart's quite fascinating. Again, Saturn is in Aries here. Sun's exalted, Jupiter's there. K2 in the first house, Mercury debilitated in the first house, has Digbal at least, not a good planet, Boudica planet. Venus exalted here, not a good planet. Exalted Mars, good planet, Lord of the 9th and the 11th, made, you know, millions of dollars. What strikes you about this chart? You probably don't know him, but I mean, I just gave you the biography and the story, but how does it showing up in the chart?
His gambling, which part?
Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, to me, what's the tragedy of this life is he was denied, you know, for a baseball player getting into the Hall of Fame and having that status is like everything. So that's the ultimate ego. And he's got Mars, you know, exalted. And the Sun's exalted, you know. And Venus, he's got 3 exalted planets, you know, which is, you know, he's a superstar, right? You don't see 3 exalted planets in many charts. But what's blocking all of this? Again, he was blocked from the Hall of Fame. He was, you know, he was famous during his years, but then, you know, having this, you know, getting kicked in the pants with this gambling scandal. You know, there's some blind spots here, obviously.
Well, so we're talking about Saturn, obviously. Saturn actually moves to Libra in the Navamsha, so it cancels that debilitation. So he would have to learn to overcome issues. And I don't know, because Saturn in the second house, if it had to do with his familial, you know, well, background, his initial as childhood. But then, you know, the biggest one of the biggest issues that I see is for Pisces, you've got Mercury in the first house. Yes, it has Digbala, but Mercury is not a good planet for Pisces, and neither is Venus.
Right,
And
Mercury's conjunct K2 tightly.
correct. I would think, and then he also has, not closely, he's got Rashi Drishti to his moon from Saturn. That's probably would cause some kind of why depression type of thing as well. It looks like I would think this guy is a baseball star if I had looked at this.
Okay.
I don't see his third house or being strong, or fifth house, or let's see his sixth house even, being able to overcome challenge. Well, I guess maybe sixth house being able to overcome challenges. The sun
Sixth house is exalted in the second.
is exalted.
Yeah.
So I guess you can say that.
Yeah. Now, to me, I think that Saturn is just, it's crushing, because it's there's a problem with, obviously there's no problem with being an athlete with an exalted Mars and an exalted Sun for being a superstar. Saturn is hurting the Sun here. The Saturn really can't hurt the Sun. Let's put it that way. We shouldn't say that Saturn is hurting the Sun, but Saturn's messing with the chart lord here. Okay, so debilitated Saturn conjunct Jupiter, somehow is messing with self-esteem. K2 in the first is messing with self-esteem. Intellect isn't working really well with Mercury in the first there. And then Lord of the fifth and the ninth. Fifth house of speculation and gambling, is debilitated. So to me, there was just, it was kind of Achilles' heel. He's got the Boudica influence also from Mercury in the first. I didn't see it. I can't imagine that he had successful relationships. He could have with the exalted Venus in the first, but there's so many challenges here for a relationship with K2 Rahu on the 1-7 axis. But to me, I think
Venus ruling the 8th house as well, being exalted, just kind of causes some issues as well.
Right. Yeah. Lord of the 8th and the first. Yeah. we can't imagine. But in a sense, Saturn, there's still, every year they talk about getting him into the Hall of Fame, and they never bring him up again. So this perpetual torture with Saturn and that exalted Saturn, denying him that exalted Sun's fame and the Martian fame of Aries, and the ascendant lord. So it's in a sense like, you can see a life of regret and guilt here for what he did, but it's just not letting up on him,
So,
to me,
wouldn't also getting that Hall of Fame would have to do with the 11th house, right? And you would see Saturn as Prashara aspect on that 11th.
Right. Yeah. So that's blocked. It's blocked. And even though Mars, Lord of the 9th, is there, Saturn's blank. So that's Saturn, that debilitated Saturn's really messing up this chart, in many ways. I just want, this is an example of, a great person with a really, even though Saturn's exalted in the Navamsha, sometimes exalted malefics are stronger. So outwardly, outwardly he was a hard worker. He hustled. His name was Mr. Hustle. So that exalted Saturn in the Navamsha, Saturn's in the 10th house here. So he was, Saturn promoted him at work because he was Mr. Hustle, but inside, obviously there's fear and there's self-deprecation that's still working in the Rashi chart. Okay.
Actually, he's got Prashara aspect from both Saturn and Rahu into that 11th house.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of desiring fame, but then, the gambling killed him. It was just, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see if it happened in a Rahu period. I didn't have time to look it up. Lucille Ball also had, we've looked at her chart, Saturn, Mars, Rahu in the 5th. She had all the problems with children. She had debilitated Saturn. I've gone over her chart. Saturn in the 2nd, in Taurus. Fear of poverty, may have had a difficult family life, fear of losing one's material possessions, hardship of too much stuff and possessions, may be critical of others' wealth, fear of love and relationship and family, deceitful and self-isolating when afflicted, victim of love and work. Positive side, self-controlling around food, service-oriented, pleasure around through work, devoted partners, comfort with older and mature people, accumulating wealth over time. Again, Saturn in the 2nd is not bad for money. It's just, it has to be slow, regular savings. And it takes a while. You can get wealthy with Saturn in the 2nd, but you have to, you have to be slow and steady with it. Let's look at Elon Musk, who my friend just gave me the rectified chart for him. And he's just a miracle worker at these things. Of course, Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk. We don't have a birth time, but my friend, who's just brilliant at these things, and I in the 3rd version of the slideshow, I wrote down his rectification, and it does make sense. Aries rising. Mars exalted at the exact degree of exaltation in the 10th, like Jeff Bezos, and conjunct Rahu. Now, don't forget, Rahu is technology. Mars is exalted in the 10th. Mars is a huge risk taker, and don't forget, a lot of engineers come out of Aries because Saturn owns the 10th. Okay, he's an engineer, like this Aries chart. Saturn in the 2nd in Taurus. Has a Danya Yoga because Laura the 11th in the 2nd. So Venus, Saturn, richest man in the planet at the moment because of the value of Tesla stock. Just bought Twitter. Even the on and off deal with Twitter. I guess they're still fighting it out. But you can see how Saturn just retrograded over his natal Mars and is moving toward his natal Rahu. So kind of an anxious time. He gave up on the court case. I think kind of interesting. He decided, just to pay the $54 a share, and rather than, I think they already, you can imagine how these lawyers had a field day. I think they had $50 million of legal fees already. Can you imagine? That's like, would you like that, Bill? I don't know. But anyway, he had 2 wives. He's got 8 children. He's got out of wedlock children. So that moon in Leo, kind of a mess. But K2 in the 4th, Mars, and he very interesting. But again, Saturn's in Taurus here, and again, it will bring long-term wealth, and it's in a yoga for wealth anyway, and the wealth has already come at a fairly young age. I mean, he's only 52, 51. Yeah, he's 51. Whether that money will stick with him, we don't know. I mean, it should, but it has, up until recently, until Tesla stock took off. I mean, it's quite a gambler with the amount of money he had to raise to kind of build all these companies all around the world to manufacture Tesla, and now buying Twitter. Anyway, reflections on that, on this chart, or Saturn?
Saturn is a Boudica planet.
Yes, Saturn's a Boudica planet here, so it could eventually take away that money. We'd have to look at his dashas. Let's see where the dashas are. It's got Moon in the 5th. We can use regular Vimshotri dasha. Rahu period. Oh, that's not Rahu Saturn, just like you. There's no, I'm sorry, he's Rahu Mercury now. He's a little bit ahead of you. Rahu Mercury. Mercury's strong, obviously, in Gemini, in the conjunct the fifth lord. It's in Jupiter's nakshatra, lord of the ninth, so it's a good time for him. Dasha's good, but it is a Rahu period. Rahu's in the 10th because status. Rahu goes till 2031. He's going to continue to do great things, obviously. Rahu's conjunct the exalted Mars in the 10th. It's a good Dasha period. So I wouldn't buy Tesla quite yet. I don't trust him on some level. I don't know.
When Saturn goes into Pisces, transits into Pisces, he's going to have some difficult times because it's going to be transiting his 8th from the moon.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he's very controversial, and he's actually done a lot of great things. I mean, he provides satellite technology for Ukraine, although now suddenly, I was reading today, suddenly it's gone because they were criticizing him because he was trying to broker peace between Ukraine and Russia. He had a really great peace plan, and people tore him apart. I mean, what's wrong with that? Our world has really gotten crazy, Yet nuclear war is better than trying to make people get along. Jesus. But he's quite a visionary. I mean, he's quite astounding, and that exalted Mars at the exact same degree of exaltation is quite powerful. Jupiter is also aspecting it, and here because we got the aspect between Jupiter and Scorpio in the 8th for research, and Mars in the 10th. So anyway, man of the news. I'm not quite sure how that Saturn is going to, I think he's been through so much already in that Rahu Saturn period. I mean, his stock actually, that Rahu Saturn period was difficult for him. He finally just got to a more level of financial stability recently. I mean, he's been on the edge quite a bit. I mean, when you're gambling, look what he's gambling. How many thousands of people does he employ? How much money does he have to put up to build factories? But Saturn's very, Saturn's in a material sign here, Taurus, and it's in that yoga. I think that Boudica period was difficult, but I think Mercury, I think is going to be better. Although not totally, that Rahu and Mercury has a 6-8 relationship. Mercury is good because it's bringing in Jupiter. There's still a lot of 8s in this coming up in his life in this Rahu Mercury period. Rahu Mercury is really good for material wealth. Okay. Martha Stewart also has Saturn in the 8th in Taurus. Again, another material great person. Saturn in Gemini, 3rd house, 3rd sign. People have breathing problems here, lung problems, asthma problems, inability to spontaneously communicate. Saturn, again, restricts, hesitant to talk. But they're also deep people, and so it's painful for them to do small talk. Some people are really good at small talk, and I hate small talk. Speech defects or hesitancy to maybe blocks from childhood. Particularly if it were in the 2nd house. For Taurus, fear of being humiliated or sounding stupid. So the self-esteem issues come out in Gemini. Silent type who may fear of expressing himself. So you can just think of Gemini and Saturn in Gemini blocking speech defects, communication defects, lung problems. Fear of those things that are new, untried, or uncontrollable. I don't know why that is. Compulsive, deceptive, rigid, gullible when it's going to, Gemini can have that dark side to it. I mean, Saturn creates rigidity, and it is a malefic. It can kind of twist Mercury, which can become a crook sometimes. Positive side of Saturn and Gemini: focused, mentally disciplined, conservative, analytical, scientific, exact, interested in words and literature, follows the rules. So, Saturn wants you to follow the rules. Famous people with Saturn in Gemini, Jonas Salk, who I don't think we've looked at. Anybody, you all know who Jonas Salk is?
Not a clue.
Okay.
Probably before my time.
Yeah, okay. So Jonas Salk developed the, in the 50s, in the sense, when we were worried about COVID and we were worried about AIDS in the 80s. In the 50s, it was polio. I mean, polio, would, put people into wheelchairs, and it was quite a horrible disease at the time, and it was affecting a lot of children. Jonas Salk, spent 7 years and developed the first vaccine for polio, which, eventually led to eradication. So it was a great kind of scientific, great scientist. That's Saturn in Gemini here. It's a yoga karaka planet, Lord of the 5th and the 9th. So it's a very positive yoga. It's in Rahu's nakshatra, which is, Rahu can be associated with research. Rahu's in the 5th for creativity. He was one of these people that would work, 20 hours a day in his lab, just determined to kind of solve this perplexing problem, and cure polio. It was just quite a feat. How does this come out in this chart? The other interesting
Being a workaholic? Is that what you're
workaholic? Yeah. Rahu does aspect Saturn. Exactly. See the exact trine, Rahu at 9, Saturn at 9. Again, Rahu's inside of Bishak for medical research, biotech.
And then you got Pluto too.
Pluto there for, Pluto, it's exactly conjunct Saturn. Powerful person. Now, the interesting thing, which you wouldn't see today, is he was a humanitarian. He was more interested in, he was a medical doctor, of course, medical researcher. He was more interested in curing polio. He did not patent the polio vaccine, so he did not benefit from it. And unlike all these scandals we have at the moment with what's going on with, COVID vaccines and things like that. But to me, he was kind of a humanitarian. And then Mars in the first Atmakaraka, relentlessly hardworking, probably wasn't good for his relationship. Boudica's sun debilitated there. Again, in this case, sun almost exact degree of debilitation. Great humility. I'm more interested in helping mankind. Rahu in Aquarius, with Moon in Aquarius, than I am in becoming famous and making lots of money. But to me, that again, this Saturn's in a Rashi, has this, or the 5th and the 9th has that great yoga. It's the best planet for Venus. So hard work leads to helping mankind here. Or the 5th and the 9th. Okay. Saturn in Cancer. This is the most interesting one, I think. I know too many of these. Cold-hearted. Again, what does Saturn do? It's like a snowball. Like Saturn's a snowball. Put it in Cancer, which is the heart. It's like cold-hearted, limited, authority without love, unsympathetic to home and domestic life, lack of emotional support, alcoholic home, distrust of emotional intimacy, craving of security in home and family life, desire to accumulate property. I think Saturn in Cancer you really see this a lot, and you have to really help these people because they're really suffering. Scars from childhood, maybe from mother, emotionally obstructed, problems with mother, unnurtured, poor health. A positive side, again, once in a while you can get Saturn and Jupiter conjunct there, or a Jupiter aspect to Saturn in the conservative, prudent, steady, consistent, works for the public, gets the job done, stable family. But not necessarily a warm family. Stable can be like sticking it out. And again, the fourth house, fourth sign. We don't like malefics in the 4th house. They block the heart. They block domestic life. Cancer has the same effect. Saturn in Cancer. A lot of famous people here. let's look at Elton John. What happened to Elton John? Looked at his chart, Scorpio rising, Jupiter in the first. It's got Saturn in the ninth here. Not a good planet for Scorpios. In this case, his dad was very militaristic and very hard on him. And even late in his life, when Saturn brought him his, Emmy gold-winning album, his dad didn't even say well done. He just, he was just a really difficult father, cold-hearted. And it killed Elton. It just totally killed him. I mean, rising, getting all these Grammys and golden records, and bringing his dad, and then suddenly his dad just like doesn't acknowledge him. So just really kind of cold, unnurturing parent. Here, Saturn in Cancer again. His mom wasn't so great either. Moon in the sixth here. Cancer, this kind of representing mother also. Mars and Mercury in the fourth. Just a difficult childhood, and it impacted him with all the drug and alcohol, but eventually Jupiter in the first kind of saves him, and he's a really good person, and really kind of rose above it all. Now a very happy father in a married gay relationship, adopting children. So went through a lot of hardships with Saturn in the ninth. Here, in a sense, he didn't turn to spirituality, and again, Saturn in the ninth may not be able to. Rock singers are usually saved if they meditate and they find a guru. He didn't, and the drugs and alcohol almost killed him a number of times. Any comments?
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting on him because he has a song called "Cold Heart." And it's just like come out with that with someone else. So that's fascinating that one of the descriptors of Saturn in Cancer is
cold heart. But yeah, mom and dad, and I'm, and self-esteem problems, K2 in the first. Okay.
I was gonna say that same thing about the song.
Cold Heart, wonderful. Yeah, good pickup. I don't know that song. Hillary Clinton. Again, we've got the rectified chart because my friend is so brilliant. He got the right time from the city of Chicago, which is like unheard of, but he did it. He somehow went in there and he did it. So this is the birth certificate time. She was born at the same hospital that I was, which has been torn down, Edgewater Hospital. Unbelievable, isn't that? Saturn and Mars in the 12th. Do you think Hillary has a cold heart? We've got Jupiter in the fourth here. Also K2 there. Moon in the seventh. Rahu's also aspecting Mars and Saturn. This is this is a very secretive person. I'm not sure we ever really will know the true Hillary Clinton, but I
just noticed something. Her chart is somewhat similar to Trump. He's got Leo ascendant, Saturn, and Venus in the 12th, Rahu in the 10th. That's so funny. Somewhat similar. I mean, not exact, but I mean, I can understand they were both born in 1947, so that's Saturn and Pluto in the 12th.
It's interesting, Rahu out Makaraka, she also felt like somewhat cheated by that election, even though it was like never quite got over it. And that's what happens with Rahu out Makaraka. You feel cheated, or people cheat you, and maybe who knows what actually happens.
Isn't that betrayal also? Like you've been betrayed?
Yes.
Rahu Makaraka. You feel
betrayed.
Actually, betrayal and cheating does happen to you.
Right. Yeah. And that happened with her husband, obviously. Yeah. Saturn, Mars, just, I just get I think this is a very difficult life. I mean, wanted so much power, and you know, really being Secretary of State isn't very much. You know, she still wants to be president. I guess she's still telling people she'll run in 2024. You know, that Rahu is just intense here. This is a very intense chart. And also my wife, and this is where it comes out very interestingly. Moon Saturn closely conjunct in the 10th. Her mom was, again, this is, again, her, in this case, my wife is not cold-hearted with Jupiter in the 1st, but her mother was. And Bonnie was the 4th of 4 children born in 5 years and was not really wanted in unplanned pregnancy. And Bonnie's mother was a star executive secretary, and she had to become a mother, and another child kept her from working. And, you know, she resented being a 50s mom. And she took it out on Bonnie. And she, you know, Bonnie would gain weight with Jupiter in the 1st, and she would pull her by the ear and weigh her and demean her and scold her. Very cruel mother here with Saturn's in Australasia here, conjunct the moon, just really kind of, you know, the epitome of this kind of cold-hearted mother here. And Saturn owns the 4th also. So the force from the 4th is Mars, which is also horribly afflicted in a planetary war with, not a planetary war, it's horribly combusted by the sun. So just very kind of difficult life.
You know, her Karakamsha, Bonnie's Karakamsha Lagna would be Gemini.
Right.
And then it would move that Saturn and Moon and Pluto, close Pluto, to the 2nd house. So I'm wondering where also that coldness would be exaggerated in her, you know, family, and or how she sees income as well.
Yeah, she's still, her self-esteem is very tied to income, and she's always underpaid, and she works harder than anybody. Lord of the 5th and the 10th, you know, with that Saturn retrograde, and she's so good at what she does. Like they make her the secretary on these teams, and they pile, you know, all this work on her, and she's having this big crisis around it now because she doesn't want to be universal secretary anymore. She wants her power to come out, and she's really kind of trying to build her diet business now to get through being this kind of, you know, doormat kind of. Really kind of interesting. It's had a very difficult life. You know, Venus conjunct K2 again, the chart lord conjunct K2 is, you know, struggling with self-esteem. I think she's worked through it, but still, you know, you never quite work through K2 conjunct the ascendant lord. Okay. Saturn in Leo, another really difficult one. I don't really ever want to be around Saturn and Leo people. Low self-esteem because the sun is like the, you know, first karka for the 1st house, buried between self-realization and self-expression and creativity. It's blocked. People, Saturn and Leo, I mean, Leo is about natural 5th sign of the zodiac. It's about expressing yourself, being on stage. You know, we get the actors and the singers and the CEOs, you know, they love being on stage and expressing their power. And Saturn is a cold snowball in Leo, and it just blocks that, and you just can't get out there. And so you end up, you know, miring in your self-esteem issues, reluctance or problem with children, natural 5th sign of the zodiac, sometimes heartless. Again, sun is the other side of heart. We forget moon is heart, but sun is also heart. You know, it's kind of a higher heart. They're both very important. Need to feel admired and envied and popular. You know, it's kind of, you know, Saturn and Leo, you want recognition and you don't feel it in yourself. You don't give it to yourself. So you try to get it from other people. You can be envious of other people's situations. difficulty in capturing the joy of childhood. Again, it's this cold snowball. It's like you have to work too hard as a child or something. You know, you don't get the joy of Jupiter in childhood. Trouble being affectionate and trouble being ignored. Exaggerate the importance of loyalty and honor. Seeks the applause of a crowd because it can't applaud itself. So again, a good way to remember this one is, again, Leo is ego. It maybe even be higher ego on some level, but kind of blocks ego and self-expression. You know, shyness is you know, it may be there. And I have a colleague who has Saturn in Leo, and I have the most difficult time with himself because it's also you know, Leo's a fixed sign, and so he's like so stubborn. Saturn makes him more rigid than Saturn in a fixed sign, and it's like you can't, you know, if I had to work on a team with him, and it was you know, it would take 5 years for him to accept, you know, an obviously good suggestion, and it just, no, we're not doing it. You know, it's really kind of difficult to me. Conflict between responsibility for themselves and others. You know, yeah, you want to, Saturn is not good enough, so it wants to kind of help everybody, doesn't help like themselves enough, so it gets a little bit too mired in self-destruction. They obstruct money, lack of pleasure, depressed, self-isolating. I mean, Saturn Leo is Saturn in Cancer and Leo, I think, are the two difficult ones. When afflicted, dependable, hardworking, persistent, offers good service, works silently in the background, monastic inclinations. My friend has all of that too, but I think it's kind of, you know, I find the dark and the light always comes out, but it depends what's going on in transit. Okay, Oliver Stone has Saturn in Leo, and you know, he's a totally fascinating character. We've looked at his chart before. Again, he's got Sun out Makorica and Saturn here in Leo in a Boudica house. He's got Venus in the first for the, you know, for the wonderful yoga. Venus in its own sign in the first. So, you know, great expression here. He was a great filmmaker. I think many of you know his life. Did all these controversial movies about politicians, JFK, Nixon, got Best Picture for Platoon, I believe, one of the best. Took his experience from Vietnam. He was a hero in Vietnam. And he's kind of a government renegade. He just did that wonderful Showtime series about 6 years ago, Untold History of the United States. Amazing series if you haven't watched it, you like history. And very controversial. I mean, the critics banned it because they don't, it wasn't towing the line, but, you know, just trying to get the truth out. I mean, all movies are always about getting the truth out. And you can see that with Saturn wanting to get the truth out. You know, in this case, the Saturn is afflicted by the Sun. It is in Leo, but it's in Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, so giving him the artistic talent. So in a sense that the Nakshatra saves that Saturn, connects it to Venus in the first, giving him a great skill in creating great movies. Moon in the eighth, difficult here, but exalted. Rahu aspecting Mars. Any other thoughts?
You know, it's interesting that you talk about Saturn and Leo. People want, the people I know who have Saturn and Sun in Leo have that exact characteristic of needing other people to be admired, needing to be the center of attention, needing people to be envious of them. It's quite interesting. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and I think in this case for Oliver Stone, Saturn's out Makorica, so again he has to actually learn the lessons of using his power properly, using his leadership properly. I don't know how he was as a director. I suspect he'd be a terror, you know, on some level with the Saturn affliction, you know, to work for, but I don't know. He does have a Jupiter aspect also. I don't know if people have talked about, you know, I certainly admire everything that he's done, but you know, but difficult energies. Okay. Saturn in Virgo. I know Elizabeth has that, right? You have Saturn in Virgo, don't you, Elizabeth?
Mine's in Sag.
Oh, you have in Sag. Okay. By the
Yeah.
way, if I miss somebody's Saturn in a sign, you can mention yours if you want to talk about yours. I know after you've got Saturn in
Aquarius.
Aquarius, and I think Catherine has Saturn in Virgo. I'm not sure. Is that right? Could be wrong. No, you don't. You have Saturn in Scorpio. Okay. So Saturn in Virgo dislikes change, obsessive, conflicted mind, calculating, not romantic, and disconnected. Lord of the fifth, and the first being Saturn, you know, just really cold. Health issues may lead it to mind-body health analysis. Again, Lord of the sixth and the first, Saturn, causing health problems in the sign of health, in the, you know, Lord of the sixth and the first. I mean, you know, it's a classic health worker position. Limitations at work, you know, that's again Lord of the sixth and the first. Saturn restricts work, need for rhythm and ritual and careful ordering of external life. I mean, we know the dark side of Virgo, you know. Those files have to be in perfect order, otherwise you're fired, you know. It could be a good thing, but you know, these Saturn people get out of hand with it. Saturn and Virgo, double service energy. So again, Virgo is the sign of service, sixth house is the sign of service, sixth sign of the Zodiac. Too much service energy. You know, sometimes you get so many health workers with Saturn and Virgo, people who work really hard, but it gets out of balance real easily, workaholic. Alignment of group with the individual may rarely be achieved. You know, you just, there's a lot of tension when you have Saturn with your coworkers. If you have Virgo rising, Lord of the sixth and the first. Again, double humility energy. Saturn's humble, Virgo's humble. You know, it's just too much. You know, you lose all the firepower to, you know, exert yourself and your will, and you just get caught up in working too much and being unhappy at your job. Then fascination with health and psychosomatic health issues, maybe a hypochondriac. You know, that's kind of very true. Regimental childhood may lead to compulsive ordering in work activity. You know, if you had a military dad or something and he made you clean up your room, make your bed every day, you can really kind of create a number on you. Feelings of discontent and resentment around being in a rut, drawn to service, but it may end up being menial. You know, you can end up, Saturn can always create menial work. You know, filing, office work. You know, I can find a lot of office workers with these kind of combinations. Easy road of routine, remains in a job that one dislikes, underpaid and overworked. So again, Virgo is the sign of work. So sixth sign of the Zodiac. So Saturn there just creates problems with workers, problems with menial work, you know, problems with health. It's easy. This one's easy to remember. Now I've got two famous people, and I can only do one if we're going to get through any other signs of the Zodiac, which we're not. Da Vinci, I don't know what to do with, so I think I'll save him. Bill Walton's easy. I don't know if you even know Bill Walton. How many people know Bill Walton?
Walmart.
No, Bill Walton is star basketball player from the 60s and 70s. He was a high school champ. He got all these awards. He created all these national championships for his team. And you know, he became a basketball coach, and he's still Gemini rising, which is a interesting sign for an athlete. Mars is in the seventh. Moon in the first, interesting, close to mother, but difficult. Chart Lord in the sixth, with Venus, the Lord of the 12th and the 5th. Saturn is Atmakarka in the 4th here. Again, Atmakarka is always causing problems. Again, Saturn in Virgo is considered strong because it's one sign from exaltation in Libra. So it's considered good to have Saturn in Virgo. It is a friend sign. It's co-owned by Rahu. So it's not good in the 4th here. So I didn't tell you his biography, but what do you think are the problems with this Saturn in Virgo and Mercury in Scorpio in the 6th? Okay, I
Did you
won't.
say that Saturn actually moves to the, there's an exchange between Rahu and Saturn?
Yeah, you can say there's a Parivartana Yoga between the 8th and the 4th. It probably didn't. He ended up getting divorced because he wasn't home ever. You know, if you're a basketball player on the roam and you're married to he married, I think, a high school sweetheart. She divorced him. You know, that's a Saturn in the 4th Atmakarka problem. Domestic life suffers because you want your fame, you know, as a basketball player. Did marry happily the second time. Maybe he learned his lessons, but he was constantly getting injured. I mean, he had a very long career, but there was only 1 or 2 seasons when he wasn't injured. So when you're an injured basketball player, I mean, at some point he was so good he got paid millions of dollars, and he was only able to play half a season, a third of the season, you know, sometimes out for a whole season, had like zillions of operations on his knees and you know, ankles and things like that. So in a sense, the Lord of the 1st and the 6th is bringing that out. It's conjunct the Lord of the 12th. Saturn in the aspecting the 6th Lord is bringing that out. So that Saturn is causing Atmakarka, is causing problems to his health, and he persevered through it. But you know, really a very great man. Saturn's also aspecting the 1st here and the moon. It's interesting, his mother was a librarian, kind of a Saturn in Virgo. You'd have to suspect, I mean, she had to be a little bit of a cold fish here, but again, angered toward mom with Mars aspecting the moon, Saturn in the 4th here. Biographies didn't talk about his relationship with his mother, but you could tell it wasn't stellar. Okay. Da Vinci you can look at on your own. Saturn in the 7th. Again, it has Dikbala in the 7th. It's exalted in Libra, but it's still kind of difficult for relationships because it's Saturn. You know, burden of present relationships or none at all. I mean, it's you know, it sticks it out, but it may not be happy. You know, put Saturn in the 7th. You know, the relationship may be cold, but they're married for a long time. I mean, I wouldn't say my relationship's cold. Well, my relationship is, I don't know. It's Saturn in this, you know, it's Saturn in Libra. It's just, you know, you wouldn't change out of fear. You've done it for routine. We're you know, we've been married so long. It's a business relationship sometime. But you know, there are all kinds of deep insecurities and coldness with Saturn in Libra. Saturn in the 7th house, trapped in a cold, lifeless marriage. Maybe very responsible to partner, may neglect one's duties. Again, I've got the aspect from Jupiter. I'm very responsible. I'm not sure that my relationship brings me a lot of happiness. Again, I'm just being honest here. A lot of famous people with Saturn in Libra: Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Edward Snowden. Steve Jobs is probably the more interesting one. We've looked at this chart before. Leo rising, sun in the 7th is not good. Again, he died young. I think he had a fairly cold relationship also, if I remember. I mean, you can imagine he worked so hard, he was kind of ruthless. Computer programming, you've got Venus Rahu in the 7th. Venus Rahu is often a good combination for computer programming in the house of creativity. Exalted Saturn's very good for technology. It's direct here. In the third, Mars and Aries, again, hard work, a lot of courage to move forward. Talked about his foster parents, Moon and Sun, in very difficult positions. Anybody remember Steve Jobs' marriage? I think he had a second. No, I can't. I didn't have time to look it up.
I don't remember.
Yeah, he's also got Saturn conjunct the A7. I think his second marriage, I mean, anybody married to Steve Jobs and having that much money is going to stick it out.
According to Wikipedia, he's only been married once.
Okay.
It only shows one, Lauren Powell Jobs, 1991 to 2011, when he died.
Okay. So thank you for looking that up. Yeah, Saturn and Libra will create a long marriage. I don't. Okay, Venus Rahu in the fifth. I have to look at his Navamsha chart. Ketu Venus in the first. He's got a complicated Navamsha chart.
Wouldn't it also could it also delay marriage? Saturn.
Yeah, I can. I got married at 42. 1991 is pretty late. I'm trying to think. I got married in 97. We're born right around the same time. Got married at 35, I guess. 30, it's still pretty late. Yeah, Saturn and Libra. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I think the 30s are still considered late because all of my friends are married and I'm considered old at 33 and not being married.
Yeah, marriage over 30 is considered late. I mean, if I get these Indian parents calling me and their daughter isn't married at 27, they're like, they're like, ready to give it up. Yeah, traditionally marriage should occur in the 20s, and 30s is late. I got married at 42. I mean, just anyway, interesting. Let's move on. Saturn and Scorpio is the most interesting one. Stress and fear increase in Scorpio as the natural 8th sign of the zodiac. It's the swamp of unconscious fears. They spin death fantasies when they may not exist, secretive and emotionally repressed. Beckons one to meditation and mysteries and spiritual experience to overcome the drama. Again, if you don't have stuff in Scorpio, when you have Scorpio, if you don't find meditation, you turn to drugs and alcohol and sex. It's a swamp, Dark side of Saturn and Scorpio is sexually manipulative rather than dealing with intimacies and deep mature love. It may lead to repressed sexual energies and increased. Saturn, Scorpio is a very sexual sign. Saturn always represses, it's a cold snowball, another way to remember it. So it's blocking sexual energy and Kundalini energy in Scorpio. Emotional turmoil may lead to checking out, to hide out, and lead to dullness and inertia. May lead to depression if repressed sexual energy is not expressed, or death if it's not dealt with. Saturn and Scorpio forces us to work hard on our deepest issues, to go into the darkness. If we do not do that, we get depressed or suffer from addictive behavior. I mean, that's, the essence of Scorpio anyway. And Saturn is just not a good place to have Saturn in. I have a lot of people, Edgar Allan Poe and Prince. I think Edgar Allan Poe is the easy one to see. You all know Edgar Allan Poe. We've talked about him. They still study him in grade school, or do they? Did you study Edgar Allan Poe? I mean, they always teach Edgar Allan Poe in high school English. I mean, Elizabeth, I'm sure you had him, right?
I think it was very brief. We did weird books where I went to school. We were just like.
Yeah, you were in the woke area already. They were, color purple and everything, Well, Edgar Allan Poe was, he probably is credited maybe with one of the first detective novels, detective stories. He wrote terror. He's the master of horror and terror, and never really liked him. A very tortured life. He was drug and alcohol. Rahu in the first, Saturn and Scorpio. Okay, he's Rahu aspecting Saturn. I think he also had sexual relationship with his sister. He was into drugs and alcohol, in the 1840s. Short life at age 40, died in the 40s. Only could deal with his fear and terror by writing these bizarre stories. Considered kind of a major figure in American literature. The French loved him. Baudelaire translated Edgar Allan Poe into French, and the translation's even better than the original. Just a very kind of difficult life. But again, Venus, Jupiter, Moon in the fifth for creativity and artistic expression. That's how he got through his darkness, but the darkness did eventually kill him. But that's a classic example of Saturn and Scorpio. Saturn in the 9th house in Sagittarius. Again, Sagittarius is about belief and religion, and Saturn here can be too dogmatic. You can get terrorists and fundamentalists if Saturn's really afflicted. You have to learn to shed your dogmatic belief structures. Maybe too submissive, having restricted growth, weak fortune, trouble with children, slow to trust, not open, low ethics, lack of honor, poor focus. Is strong and an unafflicted legal mindset, humanitarian, speaks the truth kindly, stays on track, quietly happy. I mean, Saturn we had Saturn and Jupiter in transit last time. It was actually quite powerful. It was a very blessed. Jupiter can really bless Saturn if you have Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. And bring out the really high qualities of Saturn, and we had that last time in transit. Usually it's a path of constraint, overcompensation, disillusionment. There may be pain of loss of faith and eventual realization of the meaning of life. So again, Saturn in Aquarius could struggle with finding the meaning of life. It could lead to people who are atheists or agnostics, who's struggling with belief. They may be drawn to religion, but if Saturn's too dark, it may be drawn to the religions of guilt and punishment and structure. You get these fundamentalist Christian religions, when you get a lot of Sagittarian priests with Saturn in the first. My younger brother has Saturn in the first. He's kind of a little bit like that. May have profound and penetrating mind, ultimately rebels against religious authority. Martin Luther King, I'll show you my brother's chart, which is actually, I don't know if, I probably shouldn't show you my brother's chart. I don't think he gave me permission. But he's an Orthodox religious Jew. He's got Saturn in the first, exchanging houses with Jupiter in the 12th, and Scorpio. Martin Luther King, always an interesting chart. Okay, Aries rising, Jupiter in the first. Jupiter in the first is going to be a priest or a teacher. I mean, that's what he became. It's in Ashvini Nakshatra for Ketu, which is very spiritualizing. Chart Lord Mars is afflicted in the second with Rahu. It's the Atmakarika. He was a smoker. He was common in the 60s. How else do you deal with your anxiety? Saturn in the 9th here, again in the house of religion in Sag. He was a Baptist preacher, wasn't he? His father was a preacher also. But he rose above to be this great humanitarian leader. Rahu conjunct the ascendant lord is going to kind of elevate. Rahu's exalted is going to elevate him to kind of leadership, kind of radical leadership, fighting the trends of slavery and oppression in the South. Rahu is not going to, that Rahu is very powerful in this chart, conjunct the Atmakarika Mars, but not without a lot of tragedy. Obviously, he was murdered, Rahu Mars. Sun in the 10th for status. Moon in the 11th. Any thoughts here real quickly?
I wouldn't see Martin Luther King as a religious zealous. I don't think I see him. I see him as a strong, likable, but I guess maybe Jupiter in the first.
Jupiter in the first. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, this is a very great man. Jupiter in the first in Aries. Yeah, man of destiny. I mean, man of destiny assassinated Mars Rahu conjunction at Makorica, but you know, I don't. Yeah, I don't. He had training as a Baptist priest, but he rose above it. So I mean, the Jupiter in the first, you know, is one of the best things to have. It's in a friend sign. It connects it to K2 here in the 8th. I don't know.
You know, I wonder, you know, people who I would see as a religious zealous are people like the Ayatollah Khomeini. I don't know
Right.
if you have his
I don't.
chart, but like that's who I see as a religious zealous.
I wouldn't call him a zealot, but I mean, he was I mean, there are rabbis and priests that aren't. I mean, rabbis and priests by nature are a little bit like that. Okay. But yeah, I would agree. He's not. I wouldn't say he took on the Baptist preaching energy of his father. I mean, you know, or I think we saw Billy Graham too. But you know, I think he did rise above it. But traditionally, he inherited that, and it is there.
And you know, Jupiter aspecting Sagittarius, right?
It's really helping.
It.
Yeah.
It's helping.
And Saturn. And it's a close aspect to Saturn. Remember you get Jupiter, Saturn aspects, conjunctions. That Saturn is very, and it's in the Saturn is very powerful here. This is a good Saturn. It's in the 9th. It's aspected by Jupiter. It's considered a neutral sign or a friend sign here. In this case, I think it's a lot of good energy. This is a good Saturn.
And it's in the Mula Nakshatra, which brings in that K2 energy of, I guess, mysticism, maybe deep research of something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Saturn in Capricorn. I don't know if we're gonna get through everything. You know, Capricorn's the ugly swamp creature that wants to rise out of the swamp of materialism and lift off the chains of materialism and fly up toward the heavens. You know, the mythology tells us that. It's a very difficult sign of toil and grief and suffering and hard work. Afflicted Saturn in Capricorn can be suspicious, selfish, troublemaking friends, gloomy, concerned about authority. Capricorn can be very dark. You know, Jupiter can save it as it did in transit recently. Unafflicted, hardworking, serious, responsible, good with budgets, orderly. Capricorns are great people to hire. They work hard, particularly if Saturn's strong in the chart. When weak, unscrupulous, trouble having fun, disagreeable, disconnected, gloomy, lower class. Saturn in the 10th, self-determined through a high work ethic, sacrifice and long, arduous building process. I mean, anything Capricorn, slow and steady wins the race. Feeling of inadequacy. There's always self-esteem problems with Saturn. Fear of public humiliation. Success through hard work over time is a key phrase. Famous Saturns, we have a lot of them. Jeff Bezos, Ted Kennedy, Winston Churchill. Let's look at Jeff Bezos again. I guess you all know who he is. President of Amacom. He just retired from it. And again, we don't have an exact birth time. Again, it's interesting. My friends have rectified it to Aries rising with the exalted Mars and Saturn in the 10th out Makorica. Again, we talked about this before. You had this, you know, Saturn out Makorica maybe not be good to his employees. You know, this whole scandal that continues about keeping his employees ununionized and not paying them well. You know, he's kind of like a slave owner in that respect. So he hasn't learned I don't think he's learned his Saturn out Makorica lessons here in the 10th, but, you know, it's not like he had instant wealth. He worked incredibly hard. There were times that Amazon really struggled. You know, he started it, you know, out of nothing, married his secretary, and then she divorced him. You know, more recently, you know, so much fame and wealth, and I have to look at the dashas, but it was slow and steady, you know, and it was again, the exalted Mars gave him that hard work ethic to kind of get through it all. They're in Aquarius, drawn to addictive behaviors and sexual indulgence if they don't use their energies to help humanity. So the key with Aquarius is always like, do you help humanity or do you get caught up in your own stuff? Tends to be a lone wolf and isolated, needs deep conversations and interactions. You know, they're deep philosophical people, conflict between fear of inadequacy and the desire to connect. So, you know, Venus is always the antidote for Saturn. You know, you need to connect, and very important. Mastered organizing groups, revolutionary groups, can be inspiring and charismatic and have super skills to bring people together and heal. You know, it's really the you know, Aquarians can have that really wonderful power. When strong, focused on getting results, good scientists, analysts, dependable, philosophical. Afflicted may be more focused on projects versus people, alienated, dispassionate, robotic, may be prone to addiction. May create lost souls, you know, shy, introverted people. I know a lot of Aquarians. I don't actually know a lot of Aquarians. It's really one of the, and they're very complex people. They're just brilliant, but they're often isolated and troubled. Famous, we're going to look at Lord Byron again. People know the Dalai Lama and Pope Francis. You can look, I picked Lord Byron because I'm a literature major. Did you study Lord Byron in high school? He was an English romantic poet, lived in the early 1800s, born in 1788. Really became a very famous poet. I mean, in those days, you know, if you were a good poet, it was like being, you know, Oliver Stone or something. You know, your work was well known. I mean, people didn't have any other form of entertainment but reading novels and poetry, and so they really looked up to the men of letters. He rose to great fame in his poetry. I never liked him, and I specialized in English romantic poetry, and it's not my least favorite of the English romantics, but very troubled life. Why? Gemini, what do we got in the first house?
K2 and Mars, which is, well, that K2 can be always bring. K2 Rahu on the 1/7 is always challenging.
Yeah, Mars in the first, you know, it's going to be, he's a fighter. He actually ended up being in the military. He died in battle eventually. He was, but you know, Mars is not a good planet for, you know, remember we said the planets in the first house take over the ascendant. So he's a man of letters. He was a poet. Gemini, Mercury, Venus in the 9th, Mercury in the 7th, Rahu for creativity, Mercury Atmakarica, but Mars took over the chart. He was a womanizer, he was an alcoholic, he squandered his inheritance, he was a warrior who died in battle, you know, seeking fame. So Mars the ego wanted to be famous here. Saturn here in Aquarius, though, I mean, he was fighting the Napoleonic Wars here toward the end, trying to create a better humanity. Saturn in the 9th, Lord of the 9th and the 9th. So in a sense, there was this conjunct Venus, the Lord of the 5th and the 12th. So he ended up being a great, he did eventually fulfill his humanitarian impulse in trying to fight for humanity, but a difficult life, a difficult character. Quickly, we need to finish with Pisces. Natural 12th sign of the Zodiac, you know, family problems, delays in education, too trusting, restricted, loner. Pisces are very difficult. Spiritual, charitable, good for their word, respected, prudent if Pisces is strong. Lots of unconscious fears. Again, we're dealing with 12th house here, isolation, helplessness, sacrifice for the whole. The key to Pisces is always living a life of service. Can be very lonely and helpless. Pisces is very difficult, lots of guilt, can be drawn, you know, get into drug addiction and alcohol way too easily. A lot of chaos in the 12th house. We'll study that next week. We have two good examples. Queen Victoria, you know, did live a life of service with Saturn and Pisces to her people as a royal. She's Saturn, Mars, Rahu in the 11th. A lot of people tried to assassinate her. She had 2 or 3 attempts on her life. And she was a good person, but it was just kind of being a politician. Very difficult, Saturn, you know, in that respect. Charles Baudelaire, we've looked at, the famous French poet, had 6 planets in the 8th house, Leo rising, Saturn there again, mess with relationships and drug addict. Okay. Finally, I need to leave because we have the meditation coming up. Saturn requires forgiveness and compassion of past wounds. We have to balance past negative deeds. Saturn creates circumstances to point us toward healing the past. Okay. More Saturn in the aspect. So, quick reactions. Enjoyed this lesson? I love Saturn.
I very much enjoyed it. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, Barry. It was wonderful.
So if we do a whole class on Saturn, you'll sign up, right?
Yes.
Probably.
Saturn, especially during my Saudi Sati. I need to know more about Saturn.
Somebody told me not to do a whole Saturn class because it'd be too depressing. So they said do Jupiter. Jupiter's boring. What can you say about Jupiter? It just hasn't made, you know, good luck, you know, everything. Anyway, okay, so next week we'll do houses. We're going to do the troubled houses, 7th, 8th, and 12th. I have some original tapes. I'll send you stuff to watch. I have got a lot of stuff on this. I could only do so much in one. You know, I've got 3 or 4 tapes I could send you, but it's really core. So I'll see what to do. Okay, guys, I'm having surgery Tuesday. Pray for me. Nothing. It's elective surgery. It's a good thing, but it's surgery. So hopefully we'll be ready to go back to work real quickly. Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.